More than ever today, people ask me, why should I own bonds in my portfolio? And there are a number of reasons why bonds should be in everyone's portfolio. The first and foremost is that no matter what you look at in bonds, there's always an interest payment, there's always a cash flow. And so the key question is, what am I looking as far as outlook? What am I looking as far as what my time frame may be, whether it be 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? And from there, we can start discussing the kind of risk we're looking at in bonds. The longer a bond, the more risk it has. And that is because it's going to take a lot longer for you to get your money back. The beauty about bonds, remember, is that when you invest, for example, $100 into a bond, when it matures, that means when the bond comes back to you, you get $100 back. So mathematically, this is beautiful because you know exactly what you're going to get when. And so the only other question is, how long do you want that stream of payment? Do you want that for, again, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? And that tells you a little bit about what happens if, for example, let's assume that you get a bond that's paying 2% today. And let's say 2 years from now, interest rates are 4%. Well, if I'm getting 2% and somebody else is getting 4%, that means my bond's probably not worth as much as their bond is because he's getting 4% and I'm only getting 2%. So again, the question is, what's the risk reward about the bonds that I own, the bonds that I need to have? What is my goal? If my goal is that I do need only 2% for 5 years and I want to lock that in, that's a perfect time to go out and buy a bond that has a 2% type of interest. Now the other question is, what kind of bond do I buy? We have treasury bonds, which of course are guaranteed by the US government. So they're guaranteed. No matter what happens, you're going to get your money back. There are bonds that are also issued by US government agencies. At this point, those bonds are pretty much guaranteed also. So again, these are bonds that you know that if you have a particular cash flow that you need to achieve, you're going to get that cash flow no matter what happens. There's also bonds issued by corporations like IBM, DuPont, etc. Those bonds, of course, have a little more risk to them because should IBM go bankrupt, then you may not get all your money back at a particular time. Now, there are different levels of corporate bonds. There are AAA corporate bonds, which means that those companies are very healthy. And so the chances of you getting your money back are very good. And then there are bonds that are less risky, I should say more risky, such as what they call high yield bonds. And those bonds usually have ratings of B, triple C, etc. They generate a lot more cash flow, but there's also more risk. Again, if you're buying a 1 year bond, you may be willing to take that kind of risk for 1 year if you're comfortable that the company is going to pay back. But if you're going to buy a 10-year bond in a company that you're not sure of, you probably don't want to invest in that. So it's really a function of what is it that I'm looking for? What's my risk tolerance? What's the risk tolerance of the investor? What's the goal of the investor? If the risk tolerance is great, then we can achieve greater returns depending what bond we look at. If the risk tolerance is very low, then we want to stay in short-term bonds where there may be not as much interest in yield that comes back to me, but I know that that bond's going to mature at a particular time frame, and I'm going to have specific cash flows.